day.
This meeting of the RTM will come to order. It's Wednesday, November 9th, 2016, 7:38 p.m. Welcome back, everybody. Will clerk please take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Adams? Here. Bailey?
Here.
Baker?
Here.
Burrell?
Here.
Bauer?
Here.
Burgos?
Here.
Casper?
Here.
Sini? Connolly?
Here.
Dean Shinbrot?
Here.
Evans?
Here.
Frickman?
Here.
Garcia?
Here.
Gilly?
Here.
Crockett Hubbard?
Here.
Longino? Laughlin? He's in the hospital. Marley? Massett?
Here.
McCabe?
Here.
McDermott?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Nault?
Here.
Nugent? Aubry?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Pasqualini?
Here.
Quinn?
Here.
Sleeker Hersant?
Here.
Steinford? Streeter Irma?
Here.
Streeter James?
Here.
Swindell? Wagner? Watrous?
Here.
Wells?
Here.
Williams? Wilson?
Here.
And Newsome. I have 30. Do you have 30? I have 30. What'd you get?
We have 30 members. I declare a quorum. Everybody please rise for a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes for the September 14th, 2016 RTM meeting.
Pasqualini. Who seconded that?
Parker. Motion's been made to approve the meeting minutes and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes from the September 14th meeting? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
It's two, Casper and Frickman.
2. Motion carries 28 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 abstaining.
Frickman, what? You opposed?
Did you get 2 abstentions?
Yeah, that's exactly true.
So 28, 0, and 2.
Yeah, thank you. Frickman and Casper.
Citizens petitions. This is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentation should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator or members, through the moderator, shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and or by the town manager. Citizens should make their presentations from the lectern here and state their name and address for the record. We don't have anybody signed up, but is there anybody that wishes to speak? Okay. Reception of communications. Representative Nugent, Swindell, Sini, Marr, and Wagner here?
He's in the
Is Wagner here?
No.
Okay. Wagner and Laughlin all emailed and said they would not be here tonight. In addition, I'd like to remind the RTM of an upcoming meeting. Next week, next Wednesday, at 7 o'clock right here, there's a joint RTM, Town Manager, Town Council meeting to discuss the budget for next year.
We got that agenda already, didn't we?
After our very difficult budget session last year, it's kind of apparent that there are different visions of what we want for the budget for the town of Groton. And I think, and everybody, the town council agrees and the manager, getting together and in talking about what we think the priority should be for next year's budget would be a good thing. Now, you don't have to be there, but if you want to give some input, I would definitely encourage you to be there. It will be informal, and then hopefully coming out of that meeting, everybody will have an understanding of what priorities we want to see for the town, and that should make our budget process a little better. So anybody that wants to be there, I encourage you to be there.
Can you talk about the format? Format, is it the two, you and the mayor, or how's the format?
So what we're probably going to do is kind of maybe move the tables into a circle or do something similar. Mayor Flax and I will be jointly running the meeting, but it's going to be very informal. And it's basically going to be a discussion. And so we want to make sure that the town manager and the town staff don't put effort into a lot of things that maybe we don't think we're going to necessarily approve, or we don't want to put limits on them, but we do want to have a discussion so we all understand where the other's coming from. And that worked out very well when I was on the Education Committee. Education Committee members started attending the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed allowed us to attend their budget session with the superintendent, and by doing that, Education Committee members were able to provide some input. They were able to get answers to their questions. They were able to have the whole story. So when it came to the RTM voting on the education budget, you know, a lot had already been done with groundwork, and a lot of questions were able to be answered. And it was a lot less angst. So that's what we're shooting for next year. So if anybody who wants to be there, be part of that discussion, be here next week, next Wednesday, 7 o'clock right here.
No.
Are there any questions about that meeting? Okay.
It's going to be here.
It's going to be here.
And public's invited, I suppose. It's not a closed meeting.
It's not a closed meeting. So the public is invited. Report to town manager. The town manager is at a committee of the whole meeting tonight, so Finance Director Landry is here to provide the town manager's report.
First, I'd like to, the town manager's news was out on the back table. Hopefully you all have a set of it.
Hold the mic closer to you.
Good job, you to hold the microphone closer. Thanks.
The town manager's news letter is on the back table, and hopefully you've all had a chance to pick up a copy of it. First, I'd like to go over the financial statement that was as of October 31st. The preliminary fund balance is approximately $9.9 million, which is 8.1% of the 2017 adopted budget. The general fund contingency was appropriated at $425,000 and has a current balance of $413,000. There were two transfers totaling $12,000 previously approved from contingency. Pending the RTM's approval is a $48,190 transfer for wage increases for the steelworker employees for a previously approved contract. And if that transfer is approved, the contingency balance would be $364,810. The capital reserve fund as of October 31st is estimated at $1.4 million. I just want to have a couple other things I'd like to point out to you that are in the town manager's news. As you know, Friday, November 11th is Veterans Day, and all town offices will be closed. The airport development zone, the application was sent to the state of Connecticut's Department of Economic and Community Development, and economic development staff from OPDS will be here tonight, and I expect that they'll probably elaborate on this a little bit more. The holiday gift baskets at Human Services is underway, the sign-ups, and they will continue from October 24th through November 23rd. The Thanksgiving distribution will be held on Friday, November 18th, and the December distribution will be on Friday, December 23rd. They will run from 9 to 4:30. If anyone would like to drop off donations, they can be left at the Human Services building between 8:30 and 4:30. And in the packet on attachment 1 is a list of the items that are needed. There will be a book signing of the pictorial book Groton Mystic Emergency Services that was written by James Streeter and William Tischer. There will be 3 times, one at Fitch, one at Bill Memorial Library, and one at Power 4. And this book covers 23 of Groton's past and present emergency services, and copies of the book will be available for purchase at each of those signing events. I'd like to point to attachment 5 is the September and October update on the Groton Economic Development projects. Attachment 6 is a copy of the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation decision on the budgetary dispute between the town and City of Groton highway budget. Attachment 11 is an invitation from the Groton Lodge Elks for the annual law enforcement night, and this is going to be on November 19th at 6 p.m. And attachment 12 is a listing of all the vacancies on town of Groton boards and commissions, and you can, anyone that's interested can receive an application from the town clerk's office. And that's it for the report.
Anybody have any questions for Director Landry? Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My only question is, I just have just an idea of what the charter revision expenses were.
Pardon me? Oh, for the transfer?
Charter
No,
revision.
the $7,000 of the charter revision expenses.
Those would be anticipated expenses related to, honestly, I don't know off the top of my head what those would be. Perhaps the town clerk?
It's for
Sorry.
postage and overtime and other incidentals that the commission need, like Post-it notes and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
And any publications, like once they make their decisions, there has to be publications in the newspaper and the legal ads.
Any other questions? All right. Report on economic development. Director Reiner is here to give us a rundown on economic development to date.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services. With me here tonight also is Paige Bronk, our Economic and Community Development Manager. We'll kind of give you a quick rundown of what's happening in the planning division, some of our bigger planning projects, what's happening on the economic development front, and some of our current construction projects and what's happening around town, and then have a little bit of time for some questions for all of you. So first thing first, our plan of conservation and development, our big long-range planning document, visioning where the town's going to go for the next 10 to 20 years, was adopted back at the end of June. It became effective on October 1st. That's on our webpage if you want to read it and check it out. Something that you heard a lot about during our last budget process was the updates that we needed to do, rewriting our regulations. We've been working on that very diligently. We've gone through probably the most difficult and technical part of the regulations first, the Water Resource Protection District. So this is what protects our water quality for our drinking water. This is something that we just kind of finalized working with our zoning commission on. We made application to them for this so we can proceed to the public hearing process. One thing I do want to make everybody aware of is part of that, especially this Water Resource Protection District, there's really kind of three key stakeholder groups with this. Our business community, our developers, Groton Utilities is a secondary stakeholder, and then also our environmental interests, water quality interests around town. We've had a lot of meetings on these Water Resource Protection District regulations. Maybe one or two of them have we had any business interests come to. They've been very well attended by folks from Groton Utilities and from the environmental open space water quality issues. So what our zoning commission has been hearing has been more from their concerns of what they want to see protected, stricter, more bigger buffers, higher standards for water quality protection. So I would encourage any of you, all of you, to let the zoning commission know. You can send emails to staff as residents, show up at one of their meetings that, hey, we want to be a business-friendly community. We as staff can impress that upon them. We've had some representatives from our town's Economic Development Commission show up at a couple of those meetings, but it's been limited. We're going to be doing some more business outreach to some of our local businesses in town, but we don't want our regulations to lean towards one side or the other. We're looking for that happy balance, so something to keep on all of your radars. The next step in that regulatory process is getting literally a draft of the entire document of a rewrite of the zoning regulations, and then it's still going to be, you know, as we had said before, probably another year or so before we're done with a complete rewrite. Could take a little more, a little less, but it's something that we're progressing at a good pace on. So myself and staff are happy with the progress that we're making, but we do want to see more folks included in this process, especially from the business side of things, so that we're not creating overly strict regulations. The next thing that maybe some of you have heard about, there might have been an article or two in the paper about something called tax increment financing, or TIF. People often talk about it. Tax increment financing is another economic development tool that we can utilize. It hasn't been that popular in Connecticut for a lot of years. In the recent past, the state changed the legislation, made it something that's easier for municipalities to use. And what it is, it's a financing mechanism that great development would happen at the site, but for this funding shortage that might be used to pay for infrastructure or something else along those lines, that we, the community, can start partnering with the developer to figure out a way to make these good projects happen in certain areas. There was a presentation on this topic at a recent council meeting. It's something that we're starting to take small steps towards. It's not something we want to do for just one developer. It's something we would want to identify, which we've already identified a few districts around town of where we could use this. And it's not something that would shorten or lessen the tax roll. It's something that we would utilize if the taxes today are X, and if a development happened, if it would be 3 times X, that tax, that increment, that differential, we could use a portion of that to help pay for infrastructure that's needed to make that development happen, or other key components that we, the town, determine and deem that are consistent with our tax increment financing plan and policies that we want to invest money towards. So it's something that we're starting to take some baby steps towards. Some other communities within Connecticut are now going through this process, New Britain and Canton. So it's something, keep on your radars. We'll have more to report to you on that as we move forward. Another large project that we're working on in conjunction with the Connecticut Council of Governments, the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, is a joint land use study looking at our Navy base. We're going to be working with some of our surrounding municipalities on this. These planners, they have acronyms for everything. It's JLUS, J-L-U-S, the Joint Land Use Study. These are happening all over the country, looking at military installations and what can the communities do working with these military installations to have good compatible uses and make sure that we're all helping each other. The Navy base is a good thing for Groton, helps drive our local economy, so how can we help it and how can they help us moving forward so that we don't have conflicting land uses. This is a project that's being managed by the Council of Governments. It's a over $300,000 grant. They're hiring some consultants on this, and we'll be part of the process for that project. I'm going to hand it over to Paige. He's going to talk a little bit about some of our economic development initiatives.
Good evening. The document that we handed you, we're not going to go into much detail on that tonight, but it is a survey project that we were involved in. We contracted with Great Blue Research. It was 2 different surveys. One was more of a residential and consumer-based survey, and the other one focused on business. We did some highlights within a memo that's contained in that packet, and we do plan on having Great Blue do a presentation to the RTM in the future, as well as a presentation to the town council. So we're giving you the material ahead of time so you can review it, come up to speed, and then we'll have a presentation. You can ask any questions that you might have. Just have a few items I'd like to touch on. We have been successful, you probably heard a few months ago, in securing a Community Development Block Grant Award, CDBG, $800,000 award for affordable housing work. We're working in conjunction with the Groton Housing Authority. We do compete on an annual basis for that money, and funds are limited, so we feel quite fortunate in securing that $800,000. In terms of property redevelopment, we're well aware that our role is to focus on growing the grand list. And we've done a number of different projects, the market analysis, the survey, the zoning audit that John was talking about. But at the end of the day, our goal is to try to grow that grand list. There are a number of properties that are not on the tax rolls today. Many of them town-owned, but also state-owned. So our role is to try to get them redeveloped. The first priority for us was to work on a Gold Star Highway property, 517 Gold Star Highway. We have issued an RFP. We did receive qualified responses. We are in discussions, active discussions right now with developers. We do believe that there will be a pretty sizable and significant project that will come from that, and it will have a fairly significant impact on our grand list. It's not in one fell swoop going to take care of our deficit that we experienced in having Pfizer demolish a building. It's not of that scale, but I think as more of these real estate proposals move forward, we're moving in the right direction. On that front, Mystic Oral School, we're in final discussions with the state, with their agreement. We're going to be marketing and promoting that on their behalf. They are paying us $50,000 to help with that. That's going to include funding that we can use for actual planning, writing the RFP, advertising the RFP, holding outreach with the public, working on some site plans so we can best market the property. That's over 40-acre tract of land with a 150,000 square foot building. And the state's done a lot to improve the property from an environmental standpoint. They've demolished a lot of the old buildings, so they are positioning it pretty well. We'll start marketing that. We're already showing the property to some degree, but we'll start marketing and issue an RFP early in 2017. As we deal with each one of these and we speak with different developers, we're always trying to spin off. Are you aware of this project? Are you aware of that project? So the third one I'll mention is Groton Heights. We've been showing that property for redevelopment, and as I introduce it to various developers, I tell them about our other parcels, such as Mystic Oral School. So it kind of recycles interest, and I think that we're starting to put Groton on the map. Groton Heights, we have to work through a zoning amendment. Clearly that's located in the city, and we're subject to city zoning regs, although it's a town-owned property. We believe it's in our best interest to get that rectified first before we issue the RFP. So we've had conversations with the city. We have some ideas on how we're going to move forward in getting the zoning amended. Many of you may have heard about our airport development zone submittal. That's been going on for quite a while, and we finally made our decision that we're going to submit this application without dealing with this shift that I think we were caught in for quite a while. And the state received it well. It was quite an endeavor to get it done. A lot of cost-benefit analysis involved, documenting data, jobs, anticipated new businesses that would be created. Airport Development Zone basically deals with a 2-mile radius around the airport, and we don't focus simply on transportation. There are other businesses that would also benefit from that. But basically it is another incentive program that I think helps entice the right type of external investor. There are a number of incentives that exist at the state level and also local, and I'll be perfectly honest, it's even challenging for staff to always understand what these are. It seems like government does a great job creating another program, but they don't consolidate, they don't make it any easier. So one of the tasks that we put upon ourselves is to try to translate, and we're in the process of developing a brochure that is going to further spotlight Groton, but also try and educate investors, businesses that are interested in coming. What are these programs? We can't cover everything in this, but it's our best attempt right now to give them a nutshell version of what is out there, what it means, and how it might help them. On the subject of public relations, we continue to reach out with a number of Northeastern type publications for Groton. This one in particular, Northeast Real Estate Business. We've done some postings in there. We recently had a editorial spotlight on Groton. We also do some advertisements in the New England Real Estate Journal. We use that a lot with our public properties that we're redeveloping. So again, put Groton on the map. How we're going to do that, we run ads which are being done by other communities, and we feel that we have to do the same, and we are doing that. In terms of promotions, thankfully the RTM and the council supported our desire to fund a website, and we've been working on an RFP. We'll be issuing that RFP early December, and our hope is that we'll have a contractor on board, and by spring, no later than summer, we'll have this website up and running. Again, it's a dedicated economic development website, and communities that don't have a dedicated economic development website lose roughly 90% of the traffic, because economic development gets buried in the rest of your municipal website. So our joke is whether you need a dog license or economic development, they're treated as equal, and clearly one is more important than the other. So this economic development website is going to really help us in promoting and tracking interest for Groton. Last thing I'll mention, we have an economic assistance fund within Groton, and it has a significant balance. I think it's in the order of maybe $600,000. And certainly not looking to waste the money, but it's been growing over time. We believe that the reason is the program's not really structured to be flexible in trying to work with small to medium-sized businesses so that we can help them, whatever that gap is they might need for public infrastructure, and even how we define what public infrastructure is. We're revamping that, working through our EDC. There's a task force from the EDC that helps us with that initiative, and we do have a draft. I think we're meeting next week, I believe, with them to go over. At some point, when that gets finalized, we'll be going to council and hoping to get that program revamped so that we can make better use of that funding. Thanks.
And then just to wrap it up a little bit with some current construction projects that are happening or that will be happening in the very near future. Long Meadow Apartments, it's going to be 22 units. Site work is beginning on that, and we expect construction on that maybe before the winter starts, but if not, definitely in the spring. Some apartments over on Route 12, 144 units. We expect the construction of that to start in the spring. U-Haul, many of you have probably seen that construction project going on over by Walmart. It's been a little dusty at times over the summer when it was really dry. That we expect to be completed in the spring. Walmart is doing a $1 million internal renovation. That's separate and apart from their longer range plans of doing an expansion there, which they did pull the building permit to do that larger expansion. They just haven't started the work yet. Wendy's recently did a complete retrofit of their building. Some of you might have heard before, Gabriel's was building some apartments in their upper stories. Before they even had all their COs for those, all the apartments were all rented out. So you've heard us talk about the need for a different type of housing choice within town. Those studios, those one-bedroom apartments, whenever they're coming online for new things, they're selling like hotcakes. The drive-through sushi near the Big Y, you're not going to be able to go to that drive-through sushi anymore if that was one of your favorite spots, because there's going to be a bank going there. But those folks are trying to buy another, or they've actually purchased another site right across the street, and they're hoping to relocate into a different facility. So we're hoping that that'll happen. The old location of Mike's Famous, an appliance store from the city, has moved into that spot. Also, the Groton Shopping Plaza, there's approximately a 7,500 square foot addition going on to that plaza. That's over and above what's happening with Aldi's going in that site. We expect the Aldi's to be done again sometime in the spring, and for the whole plaza to have a new facade, so the whole front treatment to be redone. We haven't heard much from EB as far as new construction projects, but we know that that's up and coming. We know that's out there. And we've been getting a lot of interest from regional and national developers because of what they're anticipating with EB. And along those lines, so this RFQ that Paige had put out for the Gold Star Highway property, as well as some things we're seeing, a redevelopment of the Branford Manor, the 441 apartments, working with a national development firm on that to see about somewhere around $18 million put back into that development, keeping it as an affordable housing development, not displacing people, but just getting some reinvestment in there. And then also working with another regional developer who does national level work at the intersection of Route 184 and 117, looking at about an $80 million mixed use development there. So right now we have a number of national level developers with their eyes on Groton, with projects that they want to do. This is very good for us. We really have to embrace this right now. We don't want to scare any of them away. We're doing our best to keep them in town. And if we get good traction with them, good things happen through the process, that will attract more national level attention and really get Groton on the map, so we can start seeing the redevelopment of some of these corridors, that Route 1 downtown area, and a lot of the other thoughts and dreams that we have for the town. So those are the big things that we wanted to cover. More than happy to answer any questions on current topics or some of the things that we talked about tonight, and if we don't have answers, we can certainly get back to you.
Does anybody have any questions? I do.
Okay.
Your zoning rework, when do you think that'll be done?
Somewhere between 12, 14 months from now. Could be a little longer, could be a little less. A lot of it, it's really predicated on zoning commission. I mean, so again, just as you have to approve, a budget going through a certain timeline, that you have a set date on. The zoning regulations, taking those through the zoning commission, there is no set date. And they're a public body that's appointed by the council. If they want to ask us for more analysis, or if they're unsure of things, they can keep pushing that ball down the road. They haven't been doing that. They've certainly been, staff has kept the pressure on them that, okay, this is something we need to do, but the timeline can always be a little variable.
What's the status of the William Seeley School sale?
That is still the current developer that has the agreement on that property is still actively working on that. He sat down with town manager Mark Offinger and I on Monday, and he gave us a status update, so it's, they're working on it.
And when do you think your brochure will be done?
That brochure?
This brochure? Less than a month.
And I apologize, the website, you say you're putting out the RFQ right now?
We're going to be putting the RFP out in December, and we are hoping that come late spring, we'll have a new web page loaded up and all ready to go, live. We don't expect it to take many, many months. We've been dealing a lot with what we want from the front end. We're going to be very descriptive in our RFQ of what we're looking for. And companies that do this do it specifically for municipalities, do this type of thing. So I think it'll move along pretty quickly once we get a firm on board.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Representative Streeter?
Thank you. A couple of questions. In your economic development work, are you concentrating on the city of Groton's area? Number one. Number two, as far as the Groton Heights School, if I'm not mistaken, in 2010, that proposal was brought to the city, and they were going to have a zone change so they could make that building more available for other disciplines or other businesses. So I don't know where we're at with that. And the third one is, are we working with the city's economic development and planning group? Because I understand that they're going to be hiring an assistant over there. Do we provide them with any assistance? Those are my questions.
All right, I'll try to answer those a little bit, and then I'll hand it over to Paige on the more difficult ones. So Groton Heights, the zoning on that, back in 2010, I think there was some work done as part of a larger group and a committee to look at what are the types of uses that folks would like to see there. The town at that time began working on a zone change amendment, and it was never submitted to the city. So where the city just went through a process of redoing some of their zoning regulations, we need to get that, move it forward, and rezone the property. So it's something that we're working on. We're not thinking it's going to take another 6.5 years. Hopefully it'll just be a few months of time. And again, we're juggling this with, we got Groton Heights, we got Mystic Oral School, and the Gold Star Highway property. So just, we're trying to balance all three of these out and move each one of them along. They're all at different stages within the process. Whether or not we target and work with the city, I mean, Paige does a lot of work when, as part of some of the economic development program. We certainly don't exclude the city. We've been asked this question a number of times. The town of Groton includes the city. It includes Groton Long Point and Noank and every other little nook and cranny of the town. So if there are opportunities, we certainly work with folks for any location that's viable for relocating or new development growth within town. As far as the city hiring on a new staff member, I know Paige has been aware of that. I don't know if you want to mention anything.
I heard about that fairly recently, a few weeks ago. It's my understanding the city proposes to hire a part-time economic development specialist. What they envision for that position, I mean, titles don't mean anything, really. What they anticipate that position would do, I really don't know. We are one Groton, and I think in the future it's in our best interest to work together. We try to do that, but clearly they're two different entities. But there are a number of projects that we envision we can collaborate on. Groton Heights is one. We're aware of the past study. There was no zoning initiative that was actually taken. We're picking up where that left off. And there are areas within the city that we actually believe should be priority areas. You'll find in the Great Blue Survey, there was reference to Thames Street waterfront. That's an area, John talked about TIF, that's kind of an area we're targeting for that as well. So we clearly understand and desire to work with the city. At the end of the day, you know, we have to have, I think, some legislative collaboration in trying to get us to that next level. But administratively, we do what we can.
Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm really pleased to hear all of this activity going on. I'm particularly pleased to hear about the airport, and you know, maybe we'll get some airline in there one of these days that we can use. I did watch on TV the session that you had with the mixed-use development on 117 and 184, and anybody who's traveled around the country knows that this is like what's going on everywhere else, and it would be just a boon to us to put something there, I think. My only question really is, do you have any status updates on the Central Hall?
Oh, sorry,
I
that
mean,
did.
people ask me about it constantly, and I just really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, sorry, that was, I meant to put that on my list of things to talk about, so my apologies on that. Actually, I had a few things on Mystic. So Central Hall, we don't have a building permit for the going up. You know, the foundation, that's set there now. They were looking to do a zoning variance to add a carport to the back of the building. They've withdrawn that, and they're looking at some other options of what they could do to just some coverage, literally from just the elements, rain or snow, for when people are pulling up to that in the future. So we're trying to work with them on that. Also in Mystic, the ice cream shop, Rod was also trying to separate out and have a separate sandwich shop, which he's been constructing for a while, and originally he was trying to get it open for the fall, but I think they're shooting for the spring now. Rise, a new restaurant that's opened up downtown. I keep meaning to get there myself. All I've heard of rave reviews about it, so if you haven't been there, check it out. And also Argia, the cruise line is moving back to Groton, so they're leaving Stonington. So that's something else that's happening. some things, good things are happening in Mystic. A year ago, we heard a lot about vacancies and what are we going to do, and all the time, Paige is getting inquiries from folks looking to locate in Mystic. They don't always want to pay the high rent in Mystic, but a lot of people want to be in Mystic because they're looking for that walkable, pedestrian-friendly, dense type of development. The same thing that we're seeing proposed for that intersection of Route 117 and 184, and that's something that that's one of the areas that we're looking at for that tax increment financing district. The two other areas initially we're looking at are, say, downtown Groton around the big Y, kind of where our big shopping plazas are, and then the other one would be the city. So again, we at the staff level administration try to collaborate and work with the city wherever we can. Additional legislative direction, collaboration from both sides is what is also very helpful and what we need. So, thanks.
Are there any other questions? I do have one. So looking into your crystal ball, next May when we're going through budget session, what do you anticipate the grand list will do? If knowing what you know now about the projects that are coming up, where do you see the grand list next May?
Next May, I don't see any substantial differences, but I see construction projects in the works that will have moderate impacts to the grand list. We have some pretty high hopes for this Gold Star Highway project. It's in active negotiation, so I can't share with you what we're looking at, but it's something of significance, as well as this 184, 117 project. You know, I hate to sound like a broken record or cliche, but you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Some of these things, it takes some time. I do feel that we have turned the ship around. Now we just got to get some people, some more folks to jump on our ship with us. I think we're going in the right direction, constantly getting attention from folks. Whenever we go to some type of regional workshop or we're talking about with some of our colleagues or the things we're doing, all we hear is how all the municipalities around us are watching what we're doing because they're on the right path, they have the right equation, they can't wait to see how well it works for us so then they can copy the things we're doing. So we need to stay out in front of this, and we're doing the best that we can as fast as we can on it. So come May, I hope to have some more good projects to talk about. Nothing constructed and completed that's going to be a big game changer, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Report of the Superintendent, Dr. Graner.
Thank you. Well, tonight I actually have three very exciting bits of information. One is, of course, the plan, the 2020 plan, which I was so grateful went to the voters. I was even more grateful that it was passed by the voters. So over the next several months, it was a great celebration last night, but this morning I sobered up and realized we have a lot of work ahead of us. And we need to keep the RTM and the town council informed, because the first step, of course, was to apply for this grant, which we did last June. And then the second step was to get local approval, and without local approval, the whole thing would have come to a screeching halt. But now there are some other steps. We have to get our diversity status, meaning the state has to look at our schools and determine if the schools currently this year are out of racial balance. We have submitted the data for Claude Chester School, and it is about 70.5% children of color. The maximum it can be is 68%. So my understanding is it will be out of racial balance, which means we will be eligible for the diversity grant. I said eligible, not we will receive the grant, but we will be eligible for it, which means we're going to have to go to the legislature and apply for this. And you know, we've said all along, and certainly the town council has said all along, if we don't get the kind of funding that we anticipated, then I believe the project would not go forward. The other step is that the state has a $450 per square foot cap on renovation costs. There's been a cap for at least a decade. It is given the requirements, construction requirements for schools, it's not particularly feasible. It's been waived many times in the past, but again, we have to waive it. And so I will come back on a regular basis and tell you where we are. We've taken a huge step forward in terms of bringing the two middle schools together and creating a middle school campus on the Fitch campus property. And we would then be able to open up these two schools. But it's going to, it's going to take a while. I will be spending a fair amount of time with this august body, I think, because the elementary schools won't open until 22, 23. So we've got a long way to go here. The middle school will open in 2020. So that's the, if everything goes as planned. But anyway, as I say, I'll keep coming back and giving you updates. The second part of my report has to do with this wonderful event I went to yesterday. The Federal Education Department awards, since 1982, it's actually a President Reagan initiative, awards blue ribbons to really outstanding schools in our country. And Connecticut had 3 schools, but only 1 elementary school. And it was one of the very few schools that didn't nominate itself. We actually were contacted by the Federal Education Department, and they wanted to know what was going on with Charles Barnum School, because those are the children of the junior enlisted personnel, and their projected achievement on statewide tests was in about, commensurate with the district, about 50%. Much to everyone's surprise, especially the Federal Education Department, at least on the science tests, I can tell you, our district average was about 56%, and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at Charles Barnum scored 90%. It far exceeded any school in our district. So this award says, in recognition, Dr. Charles Barnum Elementary School, Groton, Connecticut, exemplary achievement gap closing, National Blue Ribbon 2016, and I have distributed, and I will give anyone else. This was a very nice event that I went to yesterday. Secretary of Education, Secretary King, was there and recognized about 150 schools from all across the country. Private schools, charter schools, public schools, elementary, middle, high schools. We met people from Hawaii and from all over the country. It was really a remarkable event. So we won this blue ribbon, and we're going to, actually Congressman Courtney would like to come, and we're going to have a little celebration with the people who really won it. I felt a little bit awkward in as much as I didn't contribute anything, but the kids and the parents and the teachers and this wonderful principal who has since retired, Val Nelson, that some of you may know, she really made that school, transformed that school. It's a school that, as I was telling the people in the blue ribbon, I remember one year we had approximately 400 children in September. And then in June we had 400, but it was 400 different children. 100% transition. So when you have 100% transition and you're scoring 90% on the state test, something suspiciously right is going on in that school, and that's why that's why they, it's no we, that's why they were nominated. And the last thing is, maybe the next time I'll have a similar, I hope, award. but the Fitch High School marching band went into the New England Championships on October 29th. And not to anyone's surprise who has heard this band, it's really remarkable. They won. And so they are traveling on Saturday to, or maybe it's Sunday. No, I think it's Saturday. They are going to Giant Stadium, and they're participating in the National U.S. Bands Competition. And there are two categories, sort of the beginning competition and the open competition, and they are in the open competition. They're considered the finest band in New England, and will go in. So we'll come back. I'll come back and tell you. But if you've seen these kids perform, it is really remarkable. The musicianship that they have in marching around and how they play those instruments and not trip over themselves is sort of amazing to me. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. But that's my report.
Representative McDermott?
Mike, it's great to hear this about Charles Barnum, but can you be a little more specific as to why this school happens to be an outlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually had to write about a 25-page paper. Sometimes when you get awards like this, you realize that there's a responsibility that goes with it. I think and the school really did some soul searching about this. Same curriculum, same materials, but I think, frankly, a good thing that she's not here because she'd be blushing. I think it's because Principal Nelson brought a culture to that school a long time ago, where not only does the teacher embrace the child, everybody in the school embraces the child, so that when a student comes in, whether they come in September or August, or they come in November, because that's when the submarine comes in, those children are embraced by everybody, by the custodial staff, by the food service staff, and by all the other teachers. And what they do is they do a quick, efficient analysis of their learning needs, and they make sure that those learning needs are met, and plans are in place, and they have communication with, there's a very good military network, and so there's a good connection with the former schools. But I really think it's a kind of a culture of these are our kids, and we need to embrace them, and they just, it exudes that climate. I wish I had a better answer, because it'd be so much easier to replicate that. But I think it's a loving, caring, but high expectation that they have for those children, and there's a great relationship with the parents. Those as I say, those junior enlisted folks really, and their spouses really embrace that school.
Do you think that you could bring that to bear in some of the other schools that are just at average?
Yeah. Well, I like to say I used to be a commanding officer in the Coast Guard, and I said to that faculty, and I've said to others, that when you give an award out, one of the reasons you give the award out is, of course, you want to recognize the great ability of the person, the sailor in my case. But the other reason is you want to hold somebody up as a role model and say, this is what it looks like. And that's really what we're doing. We're talking about, and actually we're bringing initially a survey, but we are going to say to everybody in this school district that this is the way achievement occurs, that when there's this personal relationship, this personal caring for the student. And we've shared that with the principals, and we're going to be sharing that with the community, and certainly with the other faculty members.
And lastly, I mentioned this before, but people come to a community because of the schools, we know that. And a lot of people look at that real estate website, Zillow, which is the leading one in the country.
Yes.
And I had mentioned Fitch's rating before, which was, I think, a 4 or something like that, compared quite a bit lower than some of the surrounding schools, high schools. Have you ever looked into that as to why that is, and anything can be done about it?
Well, it's frustrating because, of course, each of those rating organizations uses some sort of criteria. You know, depending upon what you look at, if you look at U.S. News and World Report and lots of others, that primarily, really, because of the International Baccalaureate program, Fitch has consistently been rated one of the top high schools in the country, and certainly one of the top 3 or 4 in the state of Connecticut. Yeah, I haven't looked at Zillow yet. The first thing I'll do is when I get to the office, I'll see if I can find out what their criteria is, because that's, that's a little, depending upon what criteria they pick, of course, that will influence it. But I'll look into it. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? I would just like to congratulate the Fitch Band and also Charles Barnum School for their excellence. Congratulations.
I would pass that along. I'll be back with more good news, I hope.
Thank you, sir. Are there any liaison reports? Seeing none, we'll go to committee reports. Finance, Chairman Quinn.
Sure. Everybody's working on no sleep today. The Finance Committee met this evening at 6:20. Members were Quinn, Connolly, Gilly, Marley, Nault, Pasqualini. Finance Director Cindy Landry, Director of HR Bob Zagami. I'm going to get that. I promise. Motion 2016-0236 was put on the floor for $48,900 to be transferred from general contingency to the general fund department, and a second was made by Member Pasqualini. The floor was open for discussion. The funds were for wages increased for the United Steelworkers Park Public Works that were passed after the budget approval this year. Items discussed were wages, health, insurance, retirement, and length of contracts. After the discussions, a vote was taken with 7 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstains, and the meeting was adjourned at 6:50.
Chairman Quinn, I wanted to just correct you. I think it's $48,190. I think you misspoke a little bit. Anyway.
$48,190?
Right.
Okay. I have that written down. I'm sorry if I didn't say that correctly. Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Who approved the minutes? Who motion? And
So-
second, Representative Parker. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I was just thinking either it's too early or it's too late, because with the budget, you would think something would be done during the budget to consider this idea. Now seems kind of away from when we normally discuss budgets. I was just wondering if you may have some kind of like answer for that, perhaps?
If you recall, when we were working on the 2017 budget, we had discussed that we had several contracts that had not been settled, and the funds were put into contingency to cover those contracts when they were settled. This particular contract was settled right at the end of the fiscal year. I believe it was early or late June. So that was past the time to include those wages in the 17 budget. So they are included in contingency, and now it's to move it into the departments where those employees work, so that are being paid the wages that were part of the contract agreement.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Representative Bailey. Are there any other discussion on the Finance Committee meeting minutes? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Vote is unanimous.
So I motion to put $48,190 on the floor.
For account 2016-0236.
126.
Yep, thank you.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $48,190 for referral 2016-0236, FYE 2017 contingency transfer for United Steelworkers wages. Discussion. And before we go to discussion, how do you guys go explain the referral before they'll probably save a little bit of time with questions.
Okay, you mean the balance of the contingency?
What's that?
The balance of the contingency?
Right.
Okay. As I said, during the 17 budget, the funds for those contracts that had not been settled were placed in the contingency, and this contract for the steel workers was settled right at the end of the year. The wages are not included in the Department of Public Works budget, nor the Parks budget for the wages for the contract that has already been adopted. So this would transfer the money from contingency, where we had budgeted in 17, into those departments. And the contingency started out at the beginning of the year with the $425,000 with the transfers that had already been approved, which was the $7,000 for charter revision and the $5,000 for the Connecticut Next Initiative, left a balance of $413,000. So of that, we're asking to transfer $48,190 out of contingency into Public Works and Parks to cover those wage increases. And that would leave a balance of, after the transfer, $364,810 in contingency.
Perfect. Thank you. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What does the $48,190 equate to in a percentage of increase?
The contract was 2.25%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we will vote. All those in favor of $48,190 for referral 2016-0236, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chairman Quinn. So that's a one-year contract.
Yes, one-year contract.
Okay. Community Development Services, Chairman Conley. Education, Chairman Nugent is not here, but anybody from the Education Committee, was there a meeting?
No meeting.
Thank you. Recreation, Chairman Wilson.
No meeting, no report.
Public Safety, Chairman McDermott.
No meeting, no report.
Public Works, Chairman Dean Chimbra.
No meeting, no report.
Rules and Procedures, Chairman Massett.
No meeting, no report.
Okay. Are there any further budget discussions? Representative McDermott.
I wonder if we might have a status update on the electronic voting?
Oh, yes. The contract is in the works, and I've got authorization to have 2 months of trial, which we were going to have in April and May. That ought to be fun.
That's why I'm fired.
April, May.
Because who knows? You're questioning April, May, but notoriously we have January problems with weather and possibly no business in February, so we know we have a meeting in March and maybe in May, in April. So April and May.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Fire in the hole.
You want to try it out?
We'll try it out. We're going to try it out. Any other budget discussions? Is there any other business? Representative O'Brien.
If I might just remind everybody that the Groton Business Association is putting on their annual, sorry about that. If I might remind everybody that the Groton Business Association is putting on their annual Christmas parade, December 3rd. Anybody has a truck, a business, anything, put a light on it and get out and get on the parade. And we will have the tree lighting after the parade for the kids. We'll have cookies. We'll have hot chocolate. Santa Claus will be there, and we'll be taking pictures. So, and if anybody would be kind enough to volunteer to help us out a little bit with the parade, that would be great too. Just go on to Groton Biz, and you can get the information, or feel free to get in touch with me. We want to make it a really special night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.